Good morning, it's Mr. Fouts, and today we have a book that combines a little bit of history with a little bit of science. It's Mesmerized, How Ben Franklin Solved a Mystery That Baffled All of France, written by Mara Rockcliffe and illustrated by Jacopo Bruno. And I like this book because it taught me something that I'd never heard about, and it did it in a really visually interesting way. So I hope that you like it as much as I do. 1776. While the American Revolution raged at home, Benjamin Franklin sailed to France. His goal? To charm young King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette. Ben wanted them to send money and soldiers to America. The ragged, hungry revolutionaries needed France's help. Without it, they might lose the war. The King and Queen of France were rich and powerful, but it turned out that they needed Ben's help, too. So you see what I mean about a very visually interesting layout. The day Ben Franklin first set foot in Paris, France, he found the city all abuzz. Everyone was talking about something new, thrilling, remarkable, and strange. Something called science. Parisians giggled at a gas that nobody could see till it went up in flames. Voila! They gasped at the balloon that floated high above the rooftops, carrying a duck, a rooster, and a very nervous sheep. Ooh la la. And they absolutely went gaga over the American in the peculiar French hat, because everyone had heard about Ben Franklin's famous kite experiment, which showed that lightning was the same as electricity. Oh, mon cher papa. So here's a little diagram of his experiment and talks about it using the steps of the scientific method. Ben observed lightning flashing across the sky. He hypothesized, made a thoughtful guess, that it was electrical. Then he tested his guess by flying a kite during a thunderstorm. The kite had a metal wire at the top to attract lightning. The lightning ran down the kite's wet string into a metal key where it made sparks, supporting Ben's hypothesis that it was electricity. Do not try that at home. Ooh. But soon all Paris was abuzz about somebody new, someone remarkable, thrilling, and definitely strange. Someone called Dr. Mesmer. Dr. Mesmer was as different from Ben Franklin as a fancy layered torte was from a homemade apple pie. Where Ben was plain and simple, Dr. Mesmer was elegant and mysterious. He wore a powdered wig and a fine coat of purple silk. He carried an iron wand, and he claimed to have discovered an astonishing new force. Like a gas, this force could not be seen or touched. Like electricity, it held great power. Like the hot air balloon, it made what seemed impossible come true. Dr. Mesmer said this force streamed from the stars and flowed into his wand. When he stared into his patient's eyes and waved the wand, things happened. Women swooned, men sobbed, children fell down in fits. Dr. Mesmer could make the same glass of water taste like 20 different things. If he told a patient to taste strawberries, the patient tasted strawberries. Merci. If he told the patient to taste vinegar, the patient tasted vinegar. Puh! Dr. Mesmer said his force helped people who were sick. What kind of sickness? Any kind. Soon, everybody wanted to be mesmerized. And that's true. That's the history of how that word came to be. Dukes and countesses arrived in carriages at Dr. Mesmer's door. They disappeared into a room hidden behind heavy drapes covered with signs and symbols. Hours passed. At last, they came out and announced they were cured. What do you think is actually going on here? Do you think he's actually got some special power from the stars in that wand? Or do you think something else is going on? Bankers dropped their money bags. Lawyers flung down their books. Priests slipped away from their pulpits. Everybody crowded into Dr. Mesmer's darkened room. He agreed to share his secrets for the sake of science and 100 gold louis apiece. Everyone agreed that Dr. Mesmer's force was the most thrilling, most remarkable, and strangest thing that science had discovered yet. Doctors were furious. Their patients didn't care about regular medicine anymore. All they wanted was a wave of Dr. Mesmer's wand. The doctors griped and groused and fussed and fumed. Dr. Mesmer's force was not like electricity, a gas, or the hot air in the balloon, they told the king. Non, au contraire. The reason no one could see it or touch it was... it wasn't there. The king was in a quandary. Were the doctors simply peeved about losing their patients? Or was it true? Could all of Paris been fooled? Even the queen? Je ne sais pas. The king didn't know what to think, but he knew whom to ask. Who else but Ben Franklin? Ben said he needed to see for himself what Dr. Mesmer's force could do. Impossible. I can do it, Dr. Mesmer. Merci beaucoup, Charles. Ben watched a group of patients being mesmerized by Dr. Mesmer's helper, Charles. They gasped and groaned, twitched and trembled, even fell down in a faint. Then it was Ben Franklin's turn. He didn't gasp or groan or twitch or tremble, and he didn't faint. In fact, he didn't feel a thing. The scientific method. Ben observed the difference between the patient's reactions and his own. Dr. Mesmer said that l'Américain must be special. The forces didn't work on him. Ben had a different idea. What do you think that idea was? They're going to break it down for us. What if the force was not in Dr. Mesmer's wand, but in the patient's mind? The patients believed the force was real. They expected to tremble and twitch, to gasp and groan, and to feel better. So they did. The scientific method. Ben hypothesized that what the patients felt was caused by their own minds, not by an invisible force. But how could Ben be sure? He watched another patient being mesmerized. Charles waved his fingers near her face, and she screamed. She said she felt a burning flame. He never touched her, but whenever his hand moved, she felt the same fiery heat. Ben asked her to try it once again, blindfolded. When Charles waved his fingers near her stomach, the patient cried out in pain. She said she felt the heat in her ear. When Charles moved behind her back, the woman shrieked that she felt burning in her leg. Ben blindfolded another patient. Ben told him that he was being mesmerized, and the patient said he felt it. Charles wasn't even in the room. Then Charles came back in the room. The patient didn't know he was there. Charles stared at him. He waved his fingers. He pointed his wand. This time the patient didn't feel a thing. The scientific method. Ben tested his hypothesis by blindfolding the patients. Ben tested patient after patient, but it was always the same. If the patient expected and believed something would happen, something did, even without the force. If the patient did not expect anything to happen, nothing did, even with the force. Scientific method. The test results supported Ben's hypothesis that the so-called force did not exist. Ben went back to the king and told him what he'd seen. I wonder what's going to happen to Dr. Mesmer. Soon, all of Paris was abuzz again. Dr. Mesmer took his wand and fled. Not long after, Ben set sail. Bon voyage! With help from France, the revolution had been won. Now he needed to get to work on building a new nation, the United States. Of course, he planned to find a little time for science, too. Ben's blind test was such a good idea that it's still in use. Before a new medicine or treatment is approved, two groups of patients try it out. One group gets the real medicine. The other gets a fake, called a placebo. The patients aren't blindfolded, but they are blind in a sense, because they don't know if the medicine they took is real or fake. That way, if the group that takes the real medicine does better than the placebo group, we can be sure that the difference is due to the medicine itself, not to what the patients may have expected or believed. But what about people who feel better after taking a placebo? Think of Dr. Mesmer's patients. Their feelings were real, even if the force supposed to be at work wasn't. And while not all of them recovered from their illnesses, many did. Although he never realized it, Dr. Mesmer made an important discovery after all: the placebo effect. Sometimes a treatment works simply because people expect it to. Belief can be powerful medicine. And Dr. Mesmer helped his patients to believe. When he brought them into a dark, quiet room, stared into their eyes and waved his wand, he put them in a highly focused state in which many people tend to believe and do whatever they are told. Today, that state is called hypnosis. But we still use the word mesmerized when someone seems to be in a trance. For instance, you might be so mesmerized by a cartoon that you don't hear your name when it's called. Does that ever happen to you? It happens to me all the time. Scientists are still learning about hypothesis, the placebo effect, and many other ways our minds can help us heal. That would be no surprise to Ben Franklin. He knew that the mind could do amazing things, such as using the scientific method to find out the truth. And then here's a little bit of other information about Ben Franklin the scientist, so feel free to pause the video here if you'd like to read it. There's some other information about Dr. Mesmer as well. So this is kind of giving maybe a little bit more scientific background to the story that she was telling in the main text. And then here's some sources she used. And that's it. Thank you so much for joining me on this reading journey. I look forward to seeing you again next time. Bye.